For as long as most of us have been gaming, the lines were drawn pretty clearly. You bought a Nintendo for Mario, a PlayStation for God of War, and an Xbox for Halo. It was a world of fierce brand loyalty and never-ending online arguments. It was a badge of honor, a reason to pick a side on the playground and later in the forums. But what if I told you that world is crumbling before our very eyes? With Xbox putting its games on PlayStation and Sony's biggest hits coming to PC, the very definition of a console is changing. So, is the era of console exclusives officially over, and what does that mean for the future of that expensive box sitting under your TV? Let's break it down. To understand where we're going, you first have to get where we've been. For decades, console exclusivity was the bedrock of the entire industry. It was the simple, powerful sales pitch that moved tens of millions of machines generation after generation. These weren't just games, they were system sellers. Think about it, Halo. Combat Evolved wasn't just a great shooter, it was the entire reason to own an original Xbox. Final Fantasy VII didn't just redefine RPGs, it cemented the PlayStation as the new king of the console space. This strategy was brilliant because it did two things perfectly. First, it built a powerful brand identity. Owning a PlayStation meant you were part of a world of epic, story-driven adventures. Owning a Nintendo meant you had a ticket to unmatched creativity and family-friendly fun. This fostered a deep sense of loyalty, creating communities that would defend their platform with a passion that bordered on religious. The console wars were born from this, a cultural phenomenon fueled by which box had the better library you couldn't play anywhere else. Second, and more importantly for the companies, it drove hardware sales. If you wanted to play the next Zelda or Uncharted, you had no choice. You had to buy the box. Exclusives were the ultimate leverage, the justification for a multi-$100 purchase. They made you feel like you were part of an exclusive club. And for a long time it worked beautifully. The gardens were lush, the walls were high, and business was booming. But over the last few years, cracks have started appearing in those walls, and more recently those cracks have become gaping holes. The shift began slowly. Sony started porting some of its older celebrated titles to PC, like Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War. They framed it as a way to tempt PC players into the PlayStation ecosystem, a kind of try before you buy for their hardware. But then, the time between a game's console and PC release started to shrink. Meanwhile, Microsoft was making much bolder moves. They basically dissolved the line between Xbox and PC with Game Pass, making every single one of their first-party games available on both from day one. This was a seismic shift, but the real earthquake came when Microsoft announced it would start publishing its games on competing consoles. Suddenly, titles like Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush were popping up on the PlayStation 5. This strategy has even led to some wild outcomes. A recent report in July 2025 noted that the PS5 port of Forza Horizon 5 had become the top-selling new game on the platform for the year so far. The question is, why now? Why, after decades of a winning strategy, are these titans suddenly tearing down their own walls? The primary driver is money, but the logic is complex. First, the cost of making blockbuster AAA games has spiraled out of control. Budgets can now soar past $300 million, a figure that makes it incredibly risky to limit your audience to just one console's install base. Publishers and investors are prioritizing profit over platform loyalty, and the easiest way to maximize your return is to sell your game to as many people as possible, no matter what machine they own. Second, the console market is saturating. Both Sony and Microsoft seem to have realized there's a ceiling to how many consoles they can sell. The real sustainable growth isn't in hardware anymore, it's in software and services. This is the entire philosophy behind Xbox Game Pass. Microsoft's goal isn't just to sell more Xboxes, it's to get you subscribed to their service, whether you're playing on a console, a PC, or your phone. And now, Sony is following suit, though more cautiously. Recent job listings from Sony have been surprisingly direct, mentioning the need to shape commercial strategy for PlayStation Studios titles across platforms like Xbox and Nintendo, with the clear goal of driving long-term revenue growth and audience reach. The writing isn't just on the wall, it's in the corporate job descriptions. It's a massive shift in thinking, and it's happening faster than anyone predicted. If you're finding this breakdown interesting, and if you want to stay updated on the biggest changes in gaming, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more people and is hugely appreciated. So, the walls are crumbling. What does this new open landscape actually mean for us, the players? For gamers, the most immediate benefit is choice. The end of exclusivity means the end of being locked out of great games simply because you chose the wrong box. This also fosters larger, more unified communities. With cross-platform multiplayer becoming the norm, you can finally play with your friends regardless of their hardware. The days of not being able to squad up because one person has a PlayStation and the other has an Xbox are numbered. However, there are potential downsides. A major one is the loss of platform identity. If every console plays basically the same games, what makes a PlayStation a PlayStation? What makes an Xbox an Xbox? For years, the unique library was the answer. Without it, consoles risk becoming commoditized boxes, differentiated only by technical specs and controller shape. Some argue this erodes the unique culture that came with being a fan of a particular brand. For the industry, the implications are even more profound. The biggest question mark now hangs over Nintendo. To date, they have remained the staunch outlier, continuing a decades-long strategy of ironclad exclusivity for franchises like Mario, Zelda, and Pokémon, and it keeps working for them. They sell hardware based on the promise of unique experiences you truly can't get anywhere else. In a world where Sony and Microsoft are sharing their toys, Nintendo's walled garden suddenly looks even more distinct. Will they hold the line, or will the economic pressures that swayed their rivals eventually come for them too? This shift also redefines the console war. The battle is no longer about which piece of hardware is superior. It's now a war of ecosystems. It's PlayStation Network versus Xbox Game Pass. The goal isn't just to sell you a console, it's to capture your digital library, your friends list, and your monthly subscription fee. The hardware is becoming the delivery truck, not the main event. So where does this all lead in the next 5 to 10 years? While it's all speculation, some trends are becoming clearer. Microsoft seems to be going all in. It's not hard to imagine a future where every major Xbox and Activision Blizzard title sees a day-one release on all platforms. Rumors persist that even massive games like Starfield will eventually make their way to PlayStation. Their strategy appears clear. Be a publisher first and a platform holder second. They want Game Pass to be the Netflix of gaming, an essential subscription on every screen you own. Sony's approach looks more measured. Their strategy will likely involve timed exclusivity. New titles may stay on PlayStation for a year or so to drive hardware sales before making their way to PC and, eventually, other consoles. This was shaken up recently by the massive news that the Sony-published hit Helldivers 2 is coming to Xbox in August 2025, complete with crossplay. This marks a huge step, showing Sony is willing to bring its biggest titles to competitor consoles to grow its audience. The very concept of a console generation may even begin to blur. If games are designed to run on a wide spectrum of hardware, from a PS5 Pro to a PC to a Switch 2, the idea of a clean break every 7 years could become a thing of the past. We may be moving toward a more iterative smartphone-like model, where new hardware offers better performance but still runs the same core software as older devices. The era of console exclusives as we knew it, the one that defined the industry for over 30 years, is undeniably ending. It's being dismantled by the immense financial pressures of modern AAA game development and the strategic pivot to service-based ecosystems. For us, this means more freedom, more choice, and more chances to play with our friends. But it also signals the end of the fierce tribalism that made the console wars so captivating. The battlefield is changing from the living room to the cloud, and the fight is no longer about hardware, but about whose subscription service you're logged into. So, I have to ask you, do you think the end of exclusives is a good thing or a bad thing for gaming? Are we gaining a more open, consumer-friendly future or losing the unique soul of the platforms we grew up with? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want more deep dives into the gaming industry, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.